Before we begin the episode, I would like to thank our sponsor, Chin Up Goggles, the new generation of vision training. Its simplistic design eliminates downward vision, improving a player's spatial awareness, anticipation, skill acquisition and execution. The findings have been supported by scientific research in CIT, now MTU. Be sure to visit chinupgoggles.com for more. Welcome back to the Sideline Live podcast. You can follow us over on Twitter and Instagram at the Sideline Live. We'd love to hear from you. On episode 54, I am delighted to be joined by Dublin Camogie manager Adrian O'Sullivan. On this episode, we had a brilliant chat about coaching ethos, elite level players, the Dublin and UL Camogie setups, building a management team, and his approach to coaching men and women. I thoroughly enjoyed chatting with Adrian, so I hope you enjoyed the episode. Hi Adrian, thanks a million for joining the podcast.
No bother at all. I'm going to go on record here now and say I'm very late because I was up the walls at work, so we won't pretend that I haven't rocked into this an hour late. So thanks for your patience and thanks very much for having me.
No problem at all. Before we get into everything, I have a number of coaches listening from not only in Ireland but like the UK and the US, but can you give a little bit of background about yourself, a little bit of introduction?
Sure, yeah. Not sure where to start really. I suppose from a coaching point of view, I suppose probably most people that are listening here might recognise the name, maybe linked with Dublin Camogie. That's my role at the moment as manager, I suppose, as opposed to coach. But yeah, look, I've been involved extensively in coaching for a long time now, despite the baby face, and have come up along the same way as anybody else. I suppose like any sport, got a few lucky breaks along the way that have kind of, I suppose, maybe catapulted me into jobs that maybe I wasn't quite ready for at the time, but you fake it until you make it. But look, started off with Limerick Camogie, we had a couple of really good years with Joe Quaid and Willie Banks as the managers with the seniors and the minors, and we had a lot of success. And we ended up going to Kildare then, so had a couple of really good years. The Kildare hurlers, really, really nice bunch of lads. We went to Westmeath then in the hurling. Had a really good year. Didn't end too well. We'll probably discuss that later on in the boardroom as opposed to on the field. And then I took the Dublin Camogie job, I suppose, probably on the back of my work with the UL Ashburn team and the Thomastown Camogie team. So very lucky to get involved with UL and Thomastown, two really, really good bunches of players and management. And I suppose on the back of that, I'm sitting here talking to the Dublin Camogie manager. So that's the 30-second, I suppose, review of my career. I suppose from an academic point of view, I studied sports science down in UL. So I think that's probably where the sporting and coaching interest came from. But yeah, that's how we've ended up here today.
Brilliant. At what point in your playing career did you kind of realise you wanted to head down the coaching route?
Very quickly, Orla. I was straight. I think anybody who has coached as many teams as I have by their mid-30s realised quite quickly that it wasn't going to happen from on the playing field. No, look, I suppose, growing up, hurling was absolutely everything to us. My dad was involved in the county board and the Munster Council, so we would have been raised going to all the big games and stuff like that. And I think, always wanted to be involved in the big stage on the sideline or on the pitch. And going to Crow Park and Thurles and these places. I think, I was lucky that I'm very much a realist in life, and I realised pretty quickly, it wasn't going to happen. It wasn't going to happen for me on the pitch to go to the very, very highest level. So I don't think it was a conscious decision to go, right, well, that's it with playing, I'm going to go coaching. But I think it kind of happened organically. But I knew, from an early age that if I wanted to get to these places and experience our Ireland final days in Crow Park and things like that, that it was going to be on the coaching side and not on the playing side,
Mm-hmm. Looking back, I suppose for any younger coaches listening, I know I'm young enough coaching now. What advice do you think should young coaches or new coaches ignore?
Oof. That's a good one. What should you ignore? I suppose I'm not sure. Maybe if you asked just the advice question as opposed to ignore, that's kind of a tricky one. But I would say don't try to copy anybody else.
Okay.
I think kind of embrace your own style. I think there's no right and wrong answer when it comes to coaching. As long as you have a clear picture of the end point you want to get to for your team, or if you're coaching an individual, for your individual athlete, as long as you have a clear picture in your head of exactly what you want your team or athlete to look like, I think then you have kind of license yourself as your own coach to bring your own bit of individuality to it and try and get the team to that point. So I would say, yeah, try not to copy anyone. Obviously, you learn from everybody. I was at the Ireland-Sweden game last night in Tala, and just watching the Swedish warm-up was like picked up a couple of things I'd never seen before. And like that helped me spark conversations with my S&C coach and with my technical coach in Dublin, and so things like that. So just try and go with an open mind to every sporting event you go to. Anytime you get an opportunity to shadow coaches, take notes and things like that. But ultimately, bring your own individuality to it, and trial and error. You'll figure out over experience what's right and wrong. Sometimes your mistakes will be catastrophic and they'll cost you games in the most public of arenas, and sometimes it's just something you'll figure out on the training ground. And that's the nature of it, But yeah, be yourself, I think, and listen to everyone and be yourself. That's probably the advice I'd give to a young coach.
What kind of coaching style do you have then?
I suppose my coaching ethos is, and I'm nearly kind of half in management mode now at the moment, so I'm nearly having to think about this. But I suppose the challenge I've placed to my coaches this year is to, and every year, is to provide an environment that hits three pillars, and that's growth, learning, and enjoyment. Okay, so look, everything we do, we want to challenge the players to grow as people on and off the field, provide them with leadership opportunities, provide them with opportunities to be better people. Okay, I know that sounds cheesy and that, but look, it's a holistic approach. When you think you have a group of 30, 35 players that are giving you their time 4 nights a week, like whether you like it or not, you have a massive influence on their life in general, because they're given so much of their time to it. So I think to provide opportunities that benefit them outside of the sporting arena are very, very important. Look, learning is an obvious one. I think it's a constant learning environment. And I suppose self-directed learning, we try and provide them with an environment whereby they're provided with opportunities to learn, but they have to provide the solutions themselves. We try not to overcoach it, and that can be a fine balance as well. And look, enjoyment is absolutely key. Again, if I'm asking a player to come in and spend 4 nights a week with us in an environment, look, if it's not enjoyable, they're not going to come anyway. But I think for everybody's benefit and for everybody's longevity in the setup, you have to make it as enjoyable as you possibly can. And that's not forced enjoyment. It's just, I suppose it's nearly a mindset more than anything. It's like, look, we're not going to take ourselves too seriously here. We're going to absolutely give every ounce of what we have to try and maximize our potential. But at the end of the day, we know it's only sport. There's more important things in life than sport. And the first time someone said that to me, I probably didn't believe them. But, the older you get, there is, so it has to be enjoyable. So that's it. It's like, it's growth, learning, enjoyment. Do I have a coaching style? If you asked me this 5 or 6 years ago, I had probably gone very much down the games-based approach. If it's not game, I don't want to know about it. I very much embraced that. Probably rein that in a little bit now, and it's more of a mixture of technical drills, skill-based drills, and games-based scenarios. So that's the mix I've gone for. I think if you're it all depends on the stage of development of your squad. If you have a finely tuned panel like the Limerick Hurlers, maybe you're doing a little bit more of the games-based stuff. But I think there's always a place for doing just isolated skill work, just working on the basics of the game. So yeah, it's a combination of skills drills and game-based stuff that challenges the players to find solutions.
Mm-hmm. How much skills do you actually do in the session then, and would it have a similar structure? Let's say, I know with my own team, we run a fundamental skills drill at the straight after the warm-up every session, and the girls know it. How do you structure the skills in your sessions?
Yeah, so this year, in fairness, it was mainly down to Sadie, Sarah Donovan. We had a setup whereby we would have set up optional skills work for the players before training. Okay. So we would have set up a couple of drills. So we kind of had a pre-training before the warm-up. And by the end of the year, we were getting towards the stage, and bear in mind, it was a very short season where players were in pods and they were kind of directing that skill-based learning themselves. So they'd go and maybe 3 or 4 of them who needed to work on high fielding would go and set up their own high fielding drill. The goalies were always doing their thing. The free takers were always doing their thing. So what we would say to the players is, look, as soon as you set foot in the training ground, take every second you can to try and improve yourself. So it's kind of that old American thing, like if you're on an American football team, there's a hierarchical setup as to whether you get reps or not, and the first choice players get loads of reps, second choice get some, and third choice get none, which is I suppose not a route you really want to go down. But like the thing the American says, make every rep count. So every opportunity you get to improve, that's what we want. But we would try and incorporate some of the skills-based stuff into the warm-up as well. And then throughout the session, we would have isolated skills drills, probably building towards a game, conditioned game based on whatever we're working on that night. So there would be a high amount of skills work in all of the sessions. Yeah.
Out of interest, how early are players arriving to sessions? Like you hear of a lot of all of the inter-county teams, really men or women, and Camogie, hurling or football, and they're arriving early. Is that something that you found with Dublin? And you said even they're facilitating just pre-training skills there. Yeah,
definitely. Like, I mean, like Ciara Tierney, Faye McCarthy, Ciara Tierney and Ashmar were nearly in a competition with each other to see who could get on the field first. Ciara was like, we would always arrive around 5:30 for a 7:30 session, the management team, and you just start setting everything up, and invariably Ciara would be the first one to rock on around 6 o'clock, and just going through puck outs, going through everything. We're very lucky then as well that Ray Boyne, who's our head of analysis, he'd be early at the sessions as well, and he'd be kind of tracking different bits and pieces for the players across the evening. So whether it was their free taking percentages or shot stopping with the goalies and stuff like that. So there was some real valuable work being done early in the time. But yeah, look, anytime from 6 o'clock on, the players just start rocking on, whether they're doing pre-training activation or whether they want to do a bit of skills work or whatever like that. So yeah, it's nearly a full evening of it really when you get to that level. Yeah.
Even for yourself, you said there that that's 2 hours before training, and like however long your session is. As a coach, what are you doing in that 2 hours beforehand?
Yeah, well, I suppose as a coach, I was the manager this year. So
yeah.
But Donny would have been the coach. So Donny is going out. He's setting up the session. I suppose we would have had a management meeting earlier on the week to talk about the training sessions, but he's briefing everybody again just to make sure everybody's tuned into their role at the session. There's a fair bit of just taking 20 balls and poking them over the bar against each other as well with the management team. So
is Ray doing stats on that as well, is he?
Yeah. Thankfully he wasn't, because the stats wouldn't have stacked up against the players. I didn't want to expose ourselves in that in that way. But as a manager, you're trying to use that time to just get around and chat to people. If it's the last session before a game, you're trying to just pull aside the players who maybe haven't made the team and have a chat with them. It's not always easy to do it. You don't always have the time to do it. And like not every player will get that phone call to tell them they're not in the team. It's more if someone is coming out of the team that had been in it, you're just trying to explain to them what the reasons were and make sure that they're mentally prepared to come on and make an impact the next day. That kind of stuff. So I suppose for the manager, the pre-training time is a bit different to the coach. And that it's especially in COVID times when we couldn't have team meetings and stuff. That was a real valuable time to actually get face-to-face contact time with the players and just have a little chat and stuff like that.
From your previous roles, you mentioned how do you find now coming in as the manager? I know you would have had experience in the backroom team or as a coach previously.
Yeah, chatting to Michael O'Grady this morning. Michael will be a big character in Dublin hurling and Camogie, and just chatting about something completely different. He was asking the very same thing. He's like, how did I find it being the manager? And it's like, it's the hardest thing I've ever done. It's crazy, like the amount of hours you put into it. It's just, I would say it's nearly 3 times as much work as being the coach, I think. From a time point of view, it's just, it never stops. But if you look at where we're assembling our panel here now at the moment for Dublin for next year, and as part of that, you're liaising with, say, the likes of Jude's management, because their players are going to be playing the Leinster Championship over the winter. You've your players in 4 or 5 different colleges that are going to be playing. You're putting together your management team. You're making sure every one of them is on the same page. You're coordinating all that. We've trials starting tomorrow for players who hadn't been in around the setup, and it's just constant, and it's it's a hugely different role to being a coach. I think maybe a lot of people listening may not know the difference, and it kind of drives me mad a little bit when people refer incorrectly to the Premier League guys as the manager or the coach or whatever. And
like I just did a minute ago to you.
Well, I know that's okay. Sometimes I don't know my own identity myself, or to be honest with you. So I'm not going
My
to. I'm not
excuse
going to
is
put.
my excuse is I have a basketball background and everyone is the coach, even the head
Everyone's the
fella. So
coach. Yeah, I was down in
if I keep
UL.
doing it, just ignore me.
Yeah, I was down in UL the other evening, and there was a journalist there, a guy from Mexico, and he's doing a master's in UL, and he was just looking to interview myself and some of the players on the Ashburn
Yeah.
team, and he kept calling me coach, and I thought it was the most bizarre thing ever. Like, hey, coach, I was like, "Is you're in Limerick now, kid? You need to cut that out." But yeah, so look, huge difference between being the manager and the coach, and being the coach brings its own challenges. I mean, you have to be hugely prepared. And I was blessed with Donny this year that he was incredibly well prepared, and session plans, managed everything, clear focus. And he was able to deliver my vision for the team, which was brilliant, So, but the coach can kind of be the good guy, because like, even though he has an input into team selection and stuff like that, he kind of avoids all the flack, whereas it's the manager that has to ring someone and tell them they're not playing, or have those awkward conversations, or you name the team and next you get 5 phone calls on the way home. Why am I not playing? Why am I not doing this? Why am I not doing that? So you have to be very, very much prepared and have your homework done when you're giving feedback to the players and stuff like that. But yeah, it's different. It's hugely challenging. I think going forward, not sure if pursuing a career in intercounty management is for me. I think I prefer the coaching. But I suppose that all comes with experience as well. Maybe if you get 3 or 4 more years experience at it. But it's gone to a level now where it's almost full time. It's gone bananas. So we'll see how it goes. But look, I'll be the manager for the next couple of years with Dublin anyway. And we'll reassess after that then.
Yeah, exactly. How do you find kind of balancing that time? Like, you have a full-time job, you have other commitments, but even burnout, like, you even said there, like, you're already prepping for next year, and what's it, 22nd of October. Do you find that you've methods to prevent burnout and kind of balance everything, or is it just trying to like controlled chaos really?
Probably an element of all those things. Yeah, I think I was very lucky this year with the management group that we had in Dublin. Was very, very progressive, very forward thinking, and we were all very honest with each other. And I think that's absolutely crucial. I think as a management team, you really have to have each other's backs. And I'd have had no problem picking up the phone to Donny and go, geez, listen, that I'm just burnt out from this, and have an old rant to him or whatever. And he might do the same. And, you're not trying to hide it from each other or anything like that. It's part of it, like I have a good support network down in UL as well. Amongst the coaches and management and the development officer down there. Ronan is the development officer, and DJ Collins manages your Connor Cup team. Declan Bruder manages the Sigerson team. And we'd ring each other up and we'd have an old rant and that kind of stuff, and that, I think that helps as well. And like it probably sounds bizarre, but I've quite a good network within the Camogie managers as well.
Okay.
So say the likes of Cathal Murray in Galway, Bill Malani and Tip, Jarrett when he was with Limerick, and even Paddy down in Cork. Like, we'd often ring each other up and just shoot the breeze about different things. What would you do if this player did this, or how would you deal with this situation and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And even though obviously you're going out on the field and trying to compete with them afterwards, I think there is a bit of a kind of a managers union there, whereby we're all kind of in the same boat, and we're all in the same job, and you can kind of pick up the phone and have a chat about these things. I think that really helps as well. So I think as long as you have a solid management team around you, and you have that kind of a peer network that you can just chat to these things about and share the experiences, I think that really helps with not letting the burden of the job and the pressure of the job get to you too much, I think.
Mm-hmm. How do you structure kind of the management group around you, and, as you say, develop good support? Like, I'm kind of thinking with Dublin, you're coming into a new setup. I don't know how much you knew about, let's say, I know you knew Sarah from women's hurling, but
yeah,
kind of how did you structure that management team, and what were you looking for when you were putting together the group?
That's a very, very good question. I suppose like anything, like what we spoke about there at the very start, you have a clear picture in your head of what you want the team to look like the very last game of the season. And then it's a case of working back from there and saying, right, well, what do we need then to achieve this, right? So, and then after you identify what you need, it's okay, what personnel can I get in that can deliver this to a high level? So,
okay.
I suppose, look, we very much wanted to identify what a performance was. And I think there's probably a lot of coaches listening to this podcast, and they'll have turned around to a team and said, well, if we perform today, we'll win. And I used to do that as well, and I'm sure every coach has. But if you actually ask yourself what a performance was, could you break that down for your team? So we really, really focused this year on defining what a performance was. and then assigning numbers to it. So to do that, you need a whole amount of resources. You know, you need, obviously Ray came in with Dara and Shifra, his family, the family industry they have there, and really put a huge amount of work into defining what a performance was for us. So that helped us from that point of view. We needed to get to a high level of physical conditioning in a short period of time, which was a huge challenge. So we went and got Rachel Doolan, who was really, really good, and had a really good track record in athletic development and conditioning. And she was given that task, and she probably had the hardest job this year because it was such a short period of time to get anything done, you know. Mm-hmm. Coaching wise, look, I suppose myself and Donny were both approached individually by the county board for the management and coaching roles. We were almost forced together. But look, we had very frank discussion and honest. That frank is probably sounds aggressive. We had a really honest discussion with each other before we both took on the roles, and they said, look, this is our vision for how the game should be played. And we were able to find the commonality in that. And so again, it's a case of what do we want the team to look like? Can we deliver this together? So yeah, there's a huge amount that goes into actually molding the management team. So this year, look, we identified different areas that we wanted to improve on. So like we've added in full-time sports psychologist, full-time nutritionist in with us and stuff like that as well. So it really is just identifying areas in your performance preparation that you can improve, and then finding the high level personnel to deliver them to the highest level possible. So a lot of thought goes into it. And I'm really, really lucky to have the management team. Like the first question you asked there was how does that sit around me? I suppose obviously as the manager, you are at the top of it. Mm-hmm. But I'm very much a delegator by nature. So say this year, Donny would have been in charge of all the on-field operations. So he oversaw the medical side, athletic development side, and the conditioning side. So he would have looked after that. Ray was in charge of all the analysis, so he looked after coordinating all that and video and things like that. So it's very much I'm just kind of overlooking the whole thing and making sure it's all ticking along. And the individual team leaders, if you like, if it was a business, they'd be team leaders or managers, are looking after their own section of the management team, and then all of us have to work together. So the hardest part in that is to make sure that there's that commonality of language, commonality of direction, commonality of goals amongst the whole management team, that we're all on message. And that's probably the hardest thing, is to, in a short period of time this year especially, is to get everybody on the same page. So it was a challenge, but look, we were very, very happy with how it turned out.
Mm-hmm. I was interested when Sarah was brought into the setup. I suppose she's in a unique position. She's not that long since playing with Dublin. What was her role within the team, and how much did she add to the group?
Yeah, Sarah's a very strong character. So she's a winner by nature. I suppose she grew up in that hard Cork school whereby they had a lot of really big characters, and she went into that panel as a really young player. So I suppose she brings that resilience and that kind of a hard edge with her into her coaching. So Sarah was a selector. She was assistant coach to Donny, helping out on the field as well during training. And look, I suppose it like that talking out of school, but I think she would have found it difficult at the start, because I suppose it's very hard to make that transition from being a teammate to being a coach to someone, you know. And I suppose just human nature, it's hard to take, I suppose, constructive criticism from someone that maybe 2 years ago was your peer and now is, I suppose, perceived as being higher up in the organizational structure or being able to deliver that feedback. So, but like Sarah's a very forward-thinking young coach, and I'd be very surprised if she didn't end up as the manager at Dublin someday. I think she brought a huge amount to the setup. And yeah, look like it's all, like, she's only starting out on her coaching journey, so a huge amount to learn, of course. But definitely someone that's heading for the very, very, very top of the game, if that's where she wants to go, for sure, yeah. What
drew you to the role to take on the Dublin team?
That's an interesting one. It all happened really, really quickly, I suppose, Orla. Look, I had been saying to my peer group that I was looking for a project that I could get my teeth into. You know, I'd kind of got involved with teams here in short term and kind of helped teams out, and did a couple of years here and a couple of years there. And I was kind of say, look, I kind of want to start something and really put my stamp on it as a manager. at the time, I suppose, pre-Christmas last year, there was a number of inter-county management jobs in Camogie and hurling that were open. And I had been approached by a few of them in both hurling and Camogie at different levels. And probably none of them were really the right fit for a number of reasons. I had agreed to take on a coaching role with another county before the Dublin job came up. But when I got approached by Dublin, I suppose, look, obviously, as I said, I knew Sarah from women's hurling. I asked her about it. She felt that there was a huge amount of potential there. I suppose from a resources point of view, we're very, very lucky in Dublin that the county board really, really look after the players and management. And like, we have everything in place that you could possibly want from a management and playing point of view to go and achieve your potential. So they were the two big things, really, is that anybody I asked about the group had good things to say about them, and the county board made it clear that they were very, very supportive. So, look, they're the things really that you look for. And once they were in place, I said, yeah, let's go for it. The fact that Donny came on board as the coach as well, look, he had a massive reputation, or has a massive reputation in Dublin. Jutes have won 3 of the last 4 county championships under his direction, and I think that really helped the decision process as well. And obviously Ray Boyne had been put in place by Carl and Kevin in the county board as well. And like, sure, everybody knows Ray, so like, I mean, that was a huge thing as well to kind of go, oh, Jesus, I can't really turn this down. Like, you know, the opportunity to work with someone like Ray Boyne was absolutely massive as well. So lots of different things added up, and it's a lot of it's gut instinct as well. You just know if it feels right or not, and it felt right. So I said, yeah, we'll go for it, you know.
And how do you start with the team, and what's the first message you give? I suppose you were in a unique position. We were in lockdown when you got the job, and there was no training, and I think you banned Zoom calls. I think you weren't a big fan of them.
No, not a big fan of them. No, we certainly weren't. We certainly weren't going OTT on monitoring players and what they were doing over COVID and stuff like that. I'm trying to think back now to what the message was to the players, but I do remember at the start there was an existing panel there. Obviously, there was a number of players that weren't on that panel that maybe people felt should have been. So we felt the fairest thing to do was to give everybody a shot at it. So don't have the numbers off the top of my head. I think we ranked something like 55 or 56 players, and I think 50 said yes to being part of the initial panel. So we would have pitched our vision for the group to them. Obviously, there's been quite a turnover of managers in Dublin over the last number of years, so a lot of them had seen it all before. So I'd say they were skeptical enough. But what we asked them to do was just give us the first 6 weeks. That was it. Give us 6 weeks on the field to show them what we're about as a management team, and then we go from there. So I think it was really, really important because it gave us an opportunity to get a handle on everybody that was in the group and that was available, willing to play for Dublin. Now, it brought its own challenges as well. I mean, we were on the field nearly less than 3 weeks, I think, when we went down to Kilkenny to play in the first round of the National League with a panel of 47 or 48 or what it was, you know. So, yeah, I think so like it was a challenge, you know. Like it was really a case that we had so many players that if someone did anything good in training, you nearly had to put them in the team, because it was just, you know, we promised everybody that trial process and stuff. So 3.5 weeks in, maybe there was players playing who were probably as surprised as anyone to be starting, you know, they come out of nowhere. But look, that's a good thing as well, in that we came in with no baggage, we came in with no agendas. You don't care what club you're from, who you are, what you've done. We just take it face value and we see. But look, we're still only going through that process, really, you know. I mean, it takes time to find out about a group, takes time to find out about people's character, their attitude, whether they have the right stuff that you want on the bus going to a tough game, you know. But yeah, that was the first 5 or 6 weeks was chaotic, to be honest. It's just so many players just trying to have a look at everyone. But I think we more or less got it right, or as close as possible as you can get right in that situation, given the tough circumstances and things like that.
Yeah, exactly. You appointed Hannah Hegarty as captain. I know she was captain the year previous. How do you approach the captain? And I know leadership groups nearly is cliche at this stage, talking to coaches, but how do you approach the captain? What's their role? And do you use leadership groups?
I do, yeah. I suppose in UL, the leadership group pretty much runs the team. We hand full responsibility over to them. If they want to do anything, they organise it. They organise the bonding sessions. They organise everything. You know, they set the tone. They give the presentations to the new players on what it means to play for UL. They are the carriers of the culture. You know, I mean, ultimately, it's their team, so we very much have a player-led environment down in UL. Now it's a mature group. I suppose that's the advantage success brings, is that every time you win, I suppose you have a fresh group of players that have experienced that and understand what it means to win, and the culture and things like that. We didn't lean on a leadership group as much in Dublin this year, because again, we're only getting to know the players. So I mean, you're trying to find out about these people as people and characters, and who has the leadership qualities, and you get a fair idea. But this year we let the players pick the captain and the vice captain themselves.
Okay.
So Hannah as the captain and Ashmar as the vice captain, they would have been picked by their peer group, which I think is a ringing endorsement for them. So when the voting process was going on, we asked each player to not just select their preferred choice, but to give a reason as to why they picked them as captain. So we didn't just go on the voting process. We went on the actual peer feedback as well. So I think that was really, really valuable. And yeah, look, I lean a lot on Hannah and Ash with regards to the housekeeping of the team, if you like, the kind of the day-to-day stuff. And they would go back to the group. Obviously, if you go back to a group of 35 players, the data or the feedback you get from them is pretty much irrelevant, because it's far too much. But they bring back the key points, and like a lot of the new additions to our management team on sports psychology and nutrition and all that kind of stuff, that all came from the players, so it's not just us forcing our vision on the group. So whereas at UL, it's pretty much running itself and the players know exactly what's expected of them. In Dublin, we're not quite as far along that process yet, but look, ultimately we are trying to move towards that player-led, player-owned environment. But it's a slightly slower process when you're just trying to maybe get to know the group a little bit better.
Yeah, exactly. If you could compare college camogie to intercounty, whether it's the setup, whether it's the level of competition, a bit player ability, how does it weigh up between the two?
That's a very difficult question. I suppose they're nearly two different sports in that they're played at two different times of the year.
Yeah.
But we're incredibly lucky in UL in that we get the pick really of Galway, Tipperary, Clare, Limerick, Waterford, with a huge influx from Waterford. So like most years, the UL team will be better than the vast majority of county teams. Okay. So that's quite unusual. I think the only team we've ever lost a challenge match to over the years is Galway. So Joe, playing like Tipperary, Clare, Limerick, Waterford, these you'd be regularly beating them quite comfortably. So it's very, very hard to compare it. And obviously they're two different sports as well, and maybe players who really revel in the kind of the muck and wet sometimes of the winter hurling aren't necessarily the players who are the best players come the summertime either. But Ashbourne's incredibly high standard. Some of the games are of the highest quality. I think my first year involved in UL, the forward line I had Sarah Friday, Roisin Howard, Niamh Hannafy, Beth Carton in it. So they're probably four of the best forwards that have ever set foot in the game, all playing for the one college team. So
good luck, everyone else.
That just gives you the idea. Like the UCC team we beat that year had Orla Cronin, Hannah Looney, Libby Coppinger, Chloe Sigerson, all playing straight down the middle from them as well. So it's just an incredibly high standard. You asked about different setups. Before I came to Dublin, I would have said that the UL setup was better than any intercounty camogie setup that I've been involved in, because look, we have the advantage of being able to tap into incredible resources. The GA office are really, really supportive. The women's teams are treated on an equal footing, if not better, than the men's teams, and always has been the case down in UL, which is fantastic. But like the facilities you have are incredible. So you want to do your gym, you have your elite gym, you have your swimming pool, you have your pitches, you have everything really well looked after. Video analysis, all that. Before I came to Dublin, that was a much higher level than what I'd experienced at county level in camogie, with Limerick, or in a short time with Offaly and stuff like that. Obviously in Dublin, we're really, really lucky in that because of the support of the county board, and I suppose the backing that Dublin GA give us as well with access to different resources, we've been able to put in a really high a really high level setup for the players there now as well. So, like as I said, this year, Connor, our S&C coaches, ex-Shamrock Rovers, ex-Dublin senior hurlers. We have GPS units, sports psychologists, nutritionists, best of pitches in partnership with Trinity College. Everything you could possibly want is there. So from that point of view, I think the college game has played a part in that as well. So that we would have had players from, say, the likes of Clare, Limerick, Tipperary, and these places, and when they experienced a real high level in UL, they were able to go back to their counties and say, listen, guys, we've seen what we should be getting here, and this is what we deserve as, at the very, very minimum, this is what we should be getting as inter-county players. If we can get it in the college, we should get it in the county. So I think having players from lots of different counties experience a high level in the college environment, whether that's in UL or WIT or wherever, I think that actually helps improve the standard of the inter-county game as well.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point there. You don't have to name anyone here, but if you were to kind of put together an idea in your head of all of the elite players you've coached or have played against, what would be the common attributes you'd see across those players?
I think attitude is massive. Obviously, look, from a physical point of view, I mean, pace is hard to substitute. I think a lot of the top players just have that, I suppose, that explosive athleticism that gives them a physical advantage. But I think attitude is the key. I was just talking to someone about this the other day. We were talking about centre back play, and I was kind of going through it, and even just in Camogie, before I even talk about hurling, like the last kind of 3 teams that I've coached before we came to Dublin, Thomastown, Megan Farrell plays centre back. At UL, Karen Kennedy plays centre back. At Limerick, Rebecca DeLee was playing centre back. And I was kind of going, geez, I've been absolutely spoiled here. Like, with some of the players I've been lucky to coach. I mean, I know I mentioned the forwards there a while ago, but like some of the centre backs we've had have been absolutely brilliant, and Hannah Hegarty is well on the way to fitting into that category as well, the performances she's given for Judes and things like that. So like all their similar attributes, if I took those 4 players, Rebecca, Megan, Hannah, and Karen, they're all fiercely competitive. Athletically, they're very talented, and they're really good stick players, so they just have everything, but the real thing about the 4 of them is, for players who are at that level, there's absolutely no egos. Their attitudes are absolutely superb. Like when you go training, they're the ones who are competing the hardest. If you ask them to organize something, they're the ones who step up and organize it. If you go to a match, then they're the ones that lead from the front. So they're natural leaders. They're physically very talented, and they've great skill level as well. So they're the kind of the commonalities, and that's just the centre backs before we go talk about the forwards or anything like that. But in the men's as well, like Angus Clark and Westmeath, absolutely superb. Aaron Fitzgerald, who coached down in Éire Óg, centre back as well, like Clare Senior hurler. All the same kind of players. I suppose it's probably, even without realising it there now, I have a liking for having those kind of leaders at centre back. I think it really sets the tone in a team. But yeah, they seem to be the kind of common traits on those players. Yeah.
Do you think you can teach those traits, or is it just something that the players have?
At the elite level, I think you can improve those traits.
Okay.
I think some players are just blessed to be born with a freakish athletic ability, and if you don't have that, you're not going to get a player to that level. But you can certainly bring improvements. It takes a huge amount of work on your AD work, your athletic development, your speed work, your Olympic lifting, your nutrition, your everything. But you can make improvements. But I don't want to say you either have it or you don't, because of course you can improve everything. But the players that we're talking about at that level, so they were born with that athletic ability, and it can be very hard to take someone that doesn't have it and coach it. With regards to attitude, I think you can very much decide your attitude, and Paul Ahern will tell you that you can have an open mindset or a closed mindset, and whatever life throws at you, you can decide what way to deal with it. And even in COVID times now, it can be hard to do that. A lot of people are struggling mentally as well. But I think your attitude, you can decide what attitude you're bringing for sure, and you can help people. Like sports psychologists can help with that, and management and coaches can help with that, and you can talk about it. And of course, your skill level, you can always be working on. You can always be working to make your strengths better. You can always be working to reduce your weaknesses, So I think the one thing that you can't really put into someone is that like when I'm talking like freakish athletic ability, like Megan Farrell, who will just sidestep you, you're gone, and she's gone up the field, and that's it. There's no catching her. That kind of Karen Kennedy, the saying, that drive forward. David Reedy, Shane O'Donnell, with a coach down here, just have that explosive pace. Keena Nicoletti has it in Dublin. Like, it's just, you can't coach that. You either have it or you don't. But the rest of the things you can definitely work on if people are open to working on it. And that's the thing. It can be hard to have that mindset conversation with people. Not hard to have it. I'll have it with them, but sometimes they don't accept it. Because it can be hard for someone to tell you that you have a bad attitude or that but I'll give you an example. Like, say we're bringing back a core number of players in Dublin this year. We're asking another group to trial, and one of the players I rang today said, look, she knew when she didn't get the phone call early in the week that she was going to be asked to trial, and she'd already mentally decided in her own head that she was ready, like she was going to go to the trials and make a team, and that was it. She really wanted to be part of it. It's hard to teach that to someone. Like, that's just an attitude that player has. They're someone you definitely want on the bus with you. I don't know if you can teach that if someone has a bad attitude towards it. I'm not. There's only so much you can bring the horse to water, as they say. But it's not always as easy to get that open mindset. But that kind of stuff is like, that makes your day as a manager, and you hear that kind of thing. You've literally delivered bad news to someone and they've already turned it into a positive. Going forward, you're going to be able to trust that person. They have the right attitude.
Exactly. What are the differences you've noticed between coaching men and women?
That's a question I get asked quite a lot. I suppose there isn't too many of us out there that have kind of gone between both games at a county level. I suppose there's subtle differences. I mean, men and women can be different. It can have different personality traits, but I don't want to dwell too much on it. I mean, like, a group of men and a group of women, as in their own right, will have different personality traits within that group as well. What I found, and this is probably maybe an unusual one, sometimes I feel women take on feedback a bit better. And it's, I don't know, maybe it's just because a lot of my experience of coaching women has been in an academic environment, say like down in UL or whatever. Whereby the players there tend to be high achievers. So we have a lot of people studying physiotherapy and medicine and all that kind of stuff, and I think maybe they're at a high academic level, and they're tactically they're very tactically aware and things like that. They're quite intuitive. But really, I don't think there's any difference. I think like what we spoke about there, the very first question, male or female, the top players, it's all about attitude. Like, it's just attitude. They turn up every single day ready to compete, every single day ready to be better, every single day going, what can I do for the team? What can I do to make myself more valuable to the team? That's it. Male or female, it's attitude. That's it. Like, you'll hear some people say, oh, you can say stuff to a man that you can't say to a woman. I'd say that's rubbish. Like, if you're not willing to say it to a woman, you shouldn't say it to a man. Like, the days of roaring and shouting and screaming and team talks and all that are gone. You have to, as a coach and a manager, challenge yourself to be able to communicate to people at a human level and be able to deliver your message without going emotionally one direction or the other. So I don't buy that at all. This old fashioned thing, you can swear at a man, you can't swear to him and all this. Like, what are you swearing for in the first place? Or why are you delivering your message like that? So I'd say there's no difference. There's no difference between men and women. There's a difference between elite players and non-elite players. The elite players bring the right attitude, turn up every single day ready to go. The non-elite players don't. That's it.
Brilliant. Yeah, even the way communication, there was a brilliant clip from Liam Sheedy this year, or I think it was this year, and he knew what to do for one player, and just a calm word is enough for him, but for the next player it's the traditional, I don't know if he cursed him or not, but the way, get them riled
I'd
up.
say Liam did
alright. So like, that just shows like, it's not even what you say, it's how you say it, and being able to kind of, as you said there, know whether it's male or female, the elite and the non-elite, or just the different approaches people have. And he might have said the exact same thing to those two players, but it's the delivery that's nearly the difference between the two.
No, 100%. And look, that's why, like when you come from behind in a game or whatever, and maybe go in have after a poor first half and you come out and have a savage second half, and you'll have someone like Jerome Quinn or someone go, "What did you say to him at half time?" And it's like, like if you take any group of 30 humans and put them in a room and say something, like they'll all take it on differently anyway. So like these motivational team talks and stuff are absolute waste of time. It's just, you're focused on your numbers. We chase 4 specific numbers in Dublin. I won't go into what it is. And we just focus on that. Have we hit our numbers? Yes or no? If we haven't hit them, why have we not hit them? What can we do to make sure we hit them in the second half? That's it. Like there's no, if you're playing at an elite inter-county level and you're going out on the pitch marking another elite county player, and you need some lad that you met 6 weeks ago to give you a bollocking to get you going, well, then it's not the right place for you. That motivation has to be intrinsic. That drive has to be intrinsic. You have to want it, And like you can do a lot of work as a group on mentality and mindset and where you want to go and what your identity is. But ultimately, that all has to be, that's only, I suppose, relighting the fire that's inside you or helping you discover what's already inside you. That motivation isn't in you. Like elite sport is not the place for you.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Speaking of communication and those 4 pillars, I'm not going to ask you what they are, but with the water breaks, how did you find the water breaks and giving instruction? I presume you mentioned the 4 numbers, and would you like to see them continue in the future? Do you think it's a benefit to the players and managers, or does it just ruin the flow of the game?
I think I like them personally. Okay.
I
suppose any opportunity to coach your team during a game, I think it'd be silly not to take it on board. Okay. And I know like people gave Limerick awful flack during the year, and we'd be laughing at it down here. You kind of get to that point where people hate Limerick because you're winning so much, and it's great because we've always been the underdog for years. So we're reveling in the hatred now at this stage. But Limerick had their tactics board out and as if like this was a huge advantage. It's like, just because one team has better coaches than the other, like it's not like it's not like coaching doping, if you like. It's just they've seen what's going on in front of them, and they've adjusted their approach, or they've been better able to communicate their message to their players. Like that's just taking the situation and using it to your advantage. We definitely found it an advantage at times during the year in Dublin, especially in the last game against Down. We had pre-planned a tactical switch for the second water break. I think by the time the opposition realised what had happened, we had hauled ourselves back in front after being behind. So little things like that, whereas if that water break didn't exist, you'd be kind of trying to do it with a substitution or da. So look, I personally thought they were a good thing. Look, if I took off the coaching hat and said, look, as a spectator, do I enjoy it or not? I don't really know. Maybe does it break up the flow of the game a little bit too much? Possibly. But look, from a coaching point of view, we'll continue to try to take advantage of it for as long as it's there. If it's not there, you just have to adjust. If it's not there, you're more forward, it becomes more important again.
Yeah,
they'll be loud on the field delivering messages and stuff like that. So it's just you're always going to be coaching through the game. It's just you're just going to have to adapt to how you deliver that message depending on what the setup is. Exactly.
I saw a couple of pictures from the year. You had a kind of a walkie-talkie sort of setup with your ear. What is the use of that, I suppose? And rather than just for, the way people just do it because you see managers do it on the inter-county level, but how useful is it to have those extra eyes and ears around the place?
Yeah, again, it comes down to the numbers, so we're chasing 4 numbers. So primarily I'm radioed up to Ray, who sits above in the stand. Okay. So like Ray does a couple of things. So obviously he tracks those 4 numbers. So at each water break that comes down over the radio, and we just deliver to the players exactly where we are in relation to where we want to be on those 4 numbers. But also you'd be tracking things like your own players' possessions, like your opposition players' possessions. Yeah. So it's like that 80-20 rule. If your most important players aren't getting on the ball, then ultimately you have a responsibility to try and move them around to get them into the game. And consequently, you're tracking the opposition players, and if their key players are getting a huge number of possessions or making a huge number of positive contributions in the game, well, then that'll come down over the radio, and Ray will say, well, look, number 7 Red here is having a huge influence in the game. You need to make a switch here or whatever. And sometimes these are things that when you're at eye level on the ground, you mightn't see. More often than not, the numbers are just reinforcing what you already had in your head. But then sometimes as well, you do get a wake up call and you're going, geez, I hadn't actually spotted that. And so yeah, that's what comes down over it. Comes down over it as well. So yeah, it's very, very handy. Obviously, if you've more ishkas and more foreigners and stuff, the far side of the pitch, they're wired up as well. So
Yeah.
rather than running in and out and causing chaos, if you just get a message onto where foreigner or whatever across the far side of the pitch, that it just streamlines your communication on the day, on match day.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to ask you for a coaching book or podcast recommendation for the listeners.
Coaching podcast recommendation. Geez, that's an interesting one. I'm a bit of a, I don't know. I don't tend to listen to too many of them, right? Because I suppose it's like I used to play Football Manager like when I was younger, and now I don't play it anymore because like you do it for 30 hours a week. You
need the break from it.
You need a break from it. So it's kind of like if I'm sitting in the car and I don't have to go to training, like the last thing I'm going to do is turn on a coaching podcast. I'll be honest with you. And that's no offense to anyone who's listening to this, keep listening, right? Because they're great. But just
I'll turn off now.
Yeah. But a lot of the time I'm just not in the headspace for it. You know, it's like it's the last thing you want. So look, again, it depends on the people that you have surrounding you, right? So like DJ Collins down in UL, he'll always send you on something interesting that he sees, right? Obviously Ray Boyne is on our management team. Anybody that wants to follow Ray on Instagram or on Twitter, he's Analysis GAA. Like he's always putting up really interesting little tidbits into coaching and stuff like that. So so geez, I don't have an answer for that, I suppose. I kind of just get my kind of coaching stuff from just the people around me, you know, like Declan Bruder and Tony Fox, and these guys will just give you little bits and pieces, and Colin Murray. And I don't really have one that stands out. The High Performance podcast, I've listened to a few of those. They were quite good. But no, other than that, I kind of no it's just I just do other things, like, you know, I like crime podcasts and just stuff that's just unrelated to real life, you know. So I think that's it. Joe, you asked about coping mechanisms earlier on. I think just that, like being able to take that. Or as Fiona, our physio, says she watches Love Island. She calls it like chewing gum for her brain. Like Fiona's a physio, like, you know, so all day, every day, you're kind of thinking at a high level about, you know, people's bodies and injuries and da. So she goes home, she watches Love Island and just gives her brain a break from real stuff, you know. So chewing gum for the brain, I think, is more important than listening to other lads talking about coaching when you have it up to your ears 30 hours a week. So.
Yeah, exactly. Looking towards next year and beyond, I suppose, what's the goal going into next season? You avoided relegation this year. You're what kind of looking towards the future? I suppose you're still trying to get to know the players, and that's the biggest thing. But what are the goals for next season? Yeah,
I suppose like we very much talk about the process versus the outcome. Okay, that's our attitude. And like I just had a chat with a guy about this the other day. Like sport is sport. The reason we love sport is because of the uncertain nature of it, right? And the unpredictability of it. So even to give you an example, this year in the league, like at the second water break against Offaly, we were heading for a league quarter final. We were cruising. 15 minutes later, we'd been beaten by 2 points and we're in a relegation play, right? Mm-hmm. So your whole season can just go whoosh on 15 minutes. Okay. So like that performance we gave against Offaly that day, if you take out a couple of mistakes, was a really good performance. But if you focus on the outcome there, you say, well, you lost. So it's just a different mentality that we go with. So we don't tend to set outcome goals. Again, we go back to our 4 numbers that we're chasing, and we're confident that if we can consistently hit them this year, whereas we hit them in patches last year. So for us, an improvement is if we consistently hit our numbers, well, then we'll be happy with our progress. And there'll be days when we'll hit our numbers, and if we lose, you just lose that better team. Then you have to accept that. You can go out and give a really good performance and still lose. Okay. Consequently, you can go out and give a poor performance and you might beat a team that isn't as good as you. So again, rather than focusing on the outcome, pick our 4 numbers. Can we consistently deliver them? And if we can consistently deliver them and get them to a higher level than we did last year, well, then the outcomes will look after themselves. But I think in sport, if you set yourself outcome goals, you're just setting yourself up for a fall, because ultimately only the team that wins the trophy is a success if you go by that, you know. And like if you're aiming for a quarter final as a success, I mean, like that's nearly on the wrong end of it then. So yeah, very much focused on the process. We want to improve our processes, improve the consistency of hitting our numbers, and if we do that, we'll be very, very happy with it.
I love that answer. Some coaches will be listening to that a couple of times and kind of thinking there. I'm going to move on to the sideline 7. It's the same 7 questions at the end of every episode. Question 1, what is your favourite quote?
Attitude is everything.
Okay. Do you use quotes with the team at all?
Um, yeah, we tend to quote Ray Boyne quite a bit. um, no, yeah, look, we do have a few lads on our management team now that like telling stories, and
Okay.
kind of analogies and stuff like that. Yeah, yeah, we tend to steer away from the cheese, like, but
There's no I
look,
in team. That's not thrown around, is
yeah, no, no.
it?
Yeah, no, I seen a good one on Ray's Instagram the other day, the difference between a we mentality and a me mentality. So little tidbits like that, or like Ray is very good as well, and Donny as well. Of like if we've been speaking about something in particular training, that they'll find a clip from another sport or a manager talking about another sport just to reinforce it.
Brilliant.
So look, we do use them. We don't tend to use those cliched ones, as you say.
Yeah,
There's
yeah,
no
yeah.
way, all this kind of stuff. But for me, it's just attitude is everything. The more I coach, the more experience I get in coaching. Give me 20 players the right attitude versus the 20 most talented any day of the week, and that's it. It's just attitude is everything. That's it. It'll be written all
Brilliant.
over the place, be up all over the dressing room wall, out of shape.
Best sporting event you've been to?
Best sporting event I've been to. Um, Geez, that's an interesting one. I've been really lucky, like go all over the world to different sporting events. I saw the LeBron James, Dwayne Wade team play in Miami
Oh
one night.
wow.
Um, Been to Madison Square Garden a few times, seen the Knicks, the Rangers, that kind of stuff. So it's hard to pick a sport event. If I had to pick a non-Limerick one, because obviously we're absolutely blessed at the moment with just, we have a phenomenal group of players representing our county, and everyone's really proud of them.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the sporting moment that sticks out the most in my head, I actually was discussing this with someone the other day, was Cluxton kicking the winner for Dublin against Kerry in 2011. I think
Mm-hmm.
as a neutral to be there, just it was one of those hold your breath moments. The whole stadium knew like this was it, and to walk up to the free and put it down and kick it and walk back, and the crowd going bananas and everything, like that was, for me, that's one that just constantly sticks out. Look, I've been lucky enough. I've been to those Tipperary, Kilkenny All-Ireland hurling finals, and Limerick winning in
Mm-hmm.
2018, and even this year the All-Ireland hurling final was unreal, because like it was almost symbolic of I suppose, of where the nation had been for the previous 2 years with regards to COVID, and kind of the
Yeah.
noise in the stadium that day. It was almost like a release for everyone in the stadium.
Yeah.
And then obviously we absolutely battered Cork, which is any day you do that is brilliant. But no, I think just for an out and out standout moment, it'd be hard to forget Cluxton walking up and sticking that free. It's kind of one of those iconic things that just always stick in your
Yeah.
mind.
Yeah, I was there that day, and I even remember Kev Mack's goal, and I actually think the
Yeah.
stadium shook, like the actual foundation shook. But I'm biased as a Dub, so we'll move on from that one.
Yeah.
Biggest setback or challenge so far in your career?
Biggest challenge has definitely been managing Dublin, no question. It's a massive, massive undertaking, a huge project. Learning every single day on it. So that's definitely the biggest challenge. Biggest setback, I suppose. Look, you get used to setbacks in sport, don't you? I mean, like,
Mm-hmm.
every year, I suppose, unless you win the championship, you get a setback at some stage. So you kind of become resilient. I suppose when the year we were with the Westmeath Hurlers, we'd had a really good year. Under Joe Quaid, he got him promoted to Division 1 of the National Hurling League, first time in 35 years, something like that. I was only an assistant coach with them, and I suppose the plan for the following year was that I was going to be the head coach, and they were in Division 1 National Hurling League, and everything was in place, and then the county board removed Joe. So personally, for me, that was a setback, because I was really looking forward to taking on that league coach role with a Division 1 hurling team, playing all the top counties. So yeah, that was a setback for me. I was very, very lucky then that a few of the Westmeath players play for a club called Clonkill, and they actually invited me in to take over their club team under Kevin O'Brien for the last part of their season. They'd been kind of struggling, and we ended up winning the county championship, and it was an incredible experience. So a really great community in Clonkill. So I suppose that wouldn't have happened if we hadn't got the setback in Westmeath. So look, I tend not to dwell on these two things, on these things too much, because I think everything happens for a reason. I ended up working with Kevin for a few more years then in Offaly, and I've become good friends with him. So I suppose, look, all these things, they tend to work themselves out. But at the time, that would have been a big setback. But luckily enough, I suppose I've been lucky that I haven't had too many major ones really in my coaching career at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Kind of on the flip side, then, what is your biggest achievement on or off the pitch?
Well, probably off the pitch is probably what we spoke about earlier on. Is I'm lucky I have a really good career off the pitch, and I suppose to be able to have that career, considering how much time I put into the coaching, is probably it's probably a fair achievement in its own right, you know. Yeah, so lucky I have a very understanding boss, and he kind of trusts me to get the job done in the day job. So there's a bit of flexibility there. There's plenty of early mornings and late nights in the emails and stuff like that to try and fit in around the coaching, you know. But yeah, it's that is definitely an off the field achievement to keep that going while everything else is going on as well. It's a balancing act. On the field, look, geez, I've been incredibly lucky to be involved with some savage teams. Like, I suppose I was lucky to be the manager of the team that delivered the 5 in a row in the Ashbourne in UL, which is historic. It was the first time a senior team in UL had managed to win 5 senior championships in a row. That was really, really special. Like the win in Clonkill personally meant an awful lot for me because of what had happened at board level in Westmeath before that. So to watch the county board chairman hand over the county cup to Brendan Murta after they'd ousted Joe 5 or 6 weeks before was a fairly sweet one now, to be honest, as well. But I think the biggest achievement is one of the first ones. And in 2014, we were really, not really lucky, we deserved it, but we won the minor A Camogie All-Ireland with Limerick. So for a lot of those players, it was their first time ever competing at A level. And to this day, it's Limerick's only top grade All-Ireland in Camogie. Beat Cork in the final, the Cork team that had Amy O'Connor, Hannah Looney, Linda Collins, Libby Coppinger, Laura Tracy, Adrian O'Sullivan, Amy Lee. So that like 7 or 8 of that Cork team have gone on to win Senior All-Ireland since, and we beat them comfortably in a replay. Caoimhe Costello scored 2-6. She's the Limerick senior captain at the moment. So that was massive. Like, you know, that had never been done in the county before. Limerick have only won 2 minor All-Irelands, one in Camogie and one in hurling in their whole history. So look, it happens that it was one of the very first things we did, but I think it still sticks out as probably the biggest one in a historical context and just where that team had come from. Yeah.
Looking back, what advice would you give your 18-year-old self? Oh, no, really, like that's, I don't tend to look back too much in life, you know. I kind of, like I said earlier, I think everything in your life happens for a reason, and you just kind of have to roll with the punches. Like, I suppose as an 18-year-old, I would have been just starting out on my journey in UL studying sports science, and I suppose the dream was to have a career in sport full time. Look, you know, it's quite difficult to find that in Ireland, you know, to get a career in sport full time. So I think my 18-year-old self would be pretty happy for me to be where I am in my coaching and managing career now at the moment, as close to full time as you can get, I suppose, at such a young age. So I don't know, like, I don't know, I suppose advice to any 18-year-olds, just look, believe in yourself, go for it. If there's something you really want to achieve, just do whatever you need to do to achieve it. I don't think I have any real advice for 18-year-old me. Maybe give up the hurling dream a bit earlier and go coaching even earlier, possibly. I might be slightly further down the route, even further down the road to coaching. But no, yeah, I think it's just for any 18-year-old, just look, believe in yourself. If there's something you really want to achieve, go for it. You know, that's it really. But yeah. Very good. Who would be your dream dinner guest and why?
Dream dinner guest. Well, I had a breakfast with Ray Boyne out in Hope the other day that lasted 3.5 hours. And it was great. He gives you all the insights into Jim Gavin and Liam Sheedy and all these lads.
I'll have to get him on the podcast.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. He has stories to tell, although I'd say some of the best stories now wouldn't be for publication. But yeah, geez, that's a real interesting one. I suppose people have been impressed with lately. I was lucky enough to see Larry McCarthy speaking down in UL the other day. I think his background is real interesting. He set up the GA club in UL, and it's obviously gone the New York route to being president of the GA. I think he's someone really, really interesting. Geez, I haven't really thought about that. Probably a random one, but I read a book about Donald Trump there lately, and his, like, I think it would be highly entertaining to have dinner with him. He's not a guy you'd ever want to have in your friend circle or hang around with, but I think I'd be curious about spending 2 hours with him just to see what it was like. I probably saw either Ray or Donald or both. I think if we got both of them around the same table now, out in Holt someday for a bit of breakfast, now that'd be some crack, I'd say. Or maybe 18 holes somewhere. Yeah, that'd probably be it.
that's the first time Donald Trump has been mentioned for a dinner guest. Final question. Final question before I let you go. If your life was a book, what chapter would this be called?
Jesus. We'd be hoping it wouldn't be the last chapter anyway, I suppose. That's the main thing, isn't it? Oh my God, I have no idea. If my life was a book, what would this chapter be called? I don't know. I really don't know.
We'll go with I don't know.
You've really stumped me with that one. You'd be hoping it'd be something like where it all began, and definitely not how it all came to a crashing end anyway from a coaching point of view. So yeah, we'll say where it all started out, ... chapter 3, something like that. Somewhere near the beginning of the book anyway, and not near the end of it. Hopefully. Absolutely. We'll see. We might have to review that in a couple of years' time, but yeah, exactly. That's the story anyway.
Deadly. Thanks a million for your time. Very best of luck next year, and appreciate you coming on the podcast.
No problem. Thanks, Orla.
A massive thank you to Adrian for joining me today. I thoroughly enjoyed our chat, and I hope you got something from it. I just want to wish him the very best of luck next season and beyond. If you are enjoying the coaching series or any of the podcasts, I'd really appreciate if you could leave a rating and a review, as it does help the show grow. Don't forget to check out the website thesidelinelive.com for more content. Thanks as always for listening, and I'll catch you in the next one.